Hi, this is Simon Upstell and welcome to another tutorial for Resolve Fusion. And today I'm going to show you how to create a custom gradient colorize tool. Not because you can't cobble one together using a combination of the built-in tools, but because we're here to learn how things work and not be slaves to processes that someone else has built for us. So let's get going. Okay, so here we are in Fusion. I've got this sunrise over the sea shot and I've got this gradient. So my sunrise over the sea is 1920 1080. My gradient, you'll notice I've set up as 256 by 256. I don't actually need it to be as big as my image. In actual fact, I could even make the height 2 pixels if I wanted, and this would still work in its basic form. But I'm going to leave it at 256 and you'll understand why later on. So to get our gradient colorize, what we're going to do is we're going to use a texture node and we're going to pipe the sunrise over the sea into it and the gradient into it and look at it, and yeah, doesn't really work, does it? And we're going to try and have to work out why this method doesn't work. Although to be fair, this is not actually what this tool is for. So we're not going to bother with that for now. We're going to delete that and we're going to do it the correct way. So we're going to add a custom tool. We're going to take our sunrise shot into image 1, our gradient into image 2. And the first thing we want to do is come over to the intermediate tab and create a luminance mask for the sunrise. So we're going to type, as you know, I'm sure, and if you don't, you should, R1 times 0.2126 plus G1 times 0.7152 plus B1 times 0.0722. So then if we come over to our channels and we were to look at I1 in the red, the green and the blue, we've got a very nice luminance mask of our sunrise based on the RX 709 coefficients, which is what we're using there. You could use the 601 or the 220. Nobody would really know the difference in this case. Okay, so what we're going to do is absurdly simple. So we're going to type in the red field, get R2D open brackets I1 comma 0 close brackets, and then we're going to copy that and paste it into the green and the blue. And what we need to do for the green is change the R to a G for the green channel, and in the case of the blue we want to change the R to a B, and there we go. We've got our lovely gradient colorized. There's our original image, there's the gradient that we're using. This is the result. Super, super simple. So what on earth is happening here? As I say, we created a luminance mask, and then what we did is we asked for the value of the red channel from the gradient at these specific UV coordinates. So the V coordinate is 0, which is, in respect of this, it's the bottom line of the image, because V runs 0 to 1 from the bottom to the top. U runs 0 to 1, left to right. But in this case, we're not actually using the U values in the sense of the left to right values of the gradient. Instead, we're using the pixel values of the luminance mask to pick out the relevant colors from the gradient. So that where the mask has a low pixel value, it will pick from the left-hand side of the gradient, and where the value is high, it will pick from the right-hand side. And of course, a pixel with a mid-range value will pick from the middle of the gradient. So in other words, it's treating the relative brightness values of the pixels in the luminance mask as positional information as it relates to the gradient. So what about that 0 value? Let's have a bit of fun with that. So I've just taken my gradient into a merge and done a horizontal flip and moved it up like that, so that we can have something different at the top to what's at the bottom. And I'm going to use that instead of the original gradient as the image 2 input to the custom tool. So if we look at it as is, nothing changes, because I say we're sampling the bottom row of the gradient. But to show you the difference, I'm going to enter N1 instead of 0 in each of those fields. And now if we take our control, as soon as N1 goes above 0.5, what will happen is we will flip to the other orientation of the gradient. So the flip to the gradient going the other way. And that's because we are now sampling the top half of the gradient, because our UV value has gone above that 0.5 value. So I'm just going to swap out my sunrise shot for a black and white ramp. So black on the left, white on the right. So that's how it's being colorized currently, and you can see that pretty much exactly the same as our gradient itself. So what I'm going to do with my gradient colorize is come to the intermediate 2 field and type the following expression. So frac open brackets I1 times N2 plus N3 close brackets. I'm just going to set my number 2 value here to be 1, and I'm going to come over to channels, and instead of I1 we're going to use I2 in each of the fields here. And then if we come to our controls and we look at number 2 and I set this to 4, we get 4 repeats of the gradient. So this number 2 now is a repeat slider. So we can get as many repeats as we want, 20 if we want. And our number 3 slider is an offset slider. So if we wanted this to continuously cycle, you'll notice all we need to do is that. Now, if I go too far to the left, you'll notice we actually run out of gradient to work with. But not all is lost, because we can actually come back to our channels. And instead of the D, we can use W, which stands for wrap. D was duplicate, W is wrap. So let's swap that out in all 3 cases. And now you can see that we can carry on indefinitely with that number 3 sliding. We never run out of reference gradient because we're just wrapping around to the start again. So having built all that, you've probably guessed that there's loads more that we could build into it to customize it, give us some fancy extra custom features. But I actually want to just come back to look at the texture node one more time. So I'm just going to plug that back up again the way we did before and take a look at it and remind ourselves of this problem here. So for some reason it's thinking that it can't cope with the values of our sunset image. So the thing to understand about this texture node is it's basically exactly what we have built with our custom routine, but as I mentioned, it hasn't really been built with this process in mind, and so under the hood something a bit funky is going on if we try to make it work this way. So despite the fact it's not being fed out of range values, it still can't compute this composite. We could add in a brightness contrast, take out the saturation, reduce the brightness, but actually I've got a handy little macro called Grey Models, and I just dropped that in. That looks pretty good already. All I need to do is just adjust my green value here just a fraction, and it's sorted itself out. So there you go, that's our revised grayscale. So there, I started with the Rec 709 coefficients, and I've just reduced the contribution of the green channel, and our texture node is now responding correctly. So yeah, there you go. Using a built-in tool is often not nearly as straightforward as you think, especially since you don't know what silliness is happening under the hood. So that is why I usually prefer to actually understand the process and build it myself. Crazy, I know, but it does in many cases have advantages. So thanks for watching. I hope you've learned something useful. Hope to see you again soon.